The AFA algae, there's a lot of different pronunciations I've heard around the world. I pronounce it Aphanizomenon influx aqua. There's a bunch of other scientists that, but all in all, we shorten it to an acronym of AFA. And this AFA is a cousin algae of spirulina. So they're direct cousins with one exception. There's a portion of the AFA algae that has something referred to as PEA. And that PEA is what makes it so unique and gives it the unique properties in stem enhance that helps enhance the migration of stem cells throughout your body. So the lake is fed by two major inlets, the Sprague and the Williamson rivers, that are aquifers that come directly from Crater Lake, which is one of the purest and deepest lakes in the world. So the uniqueness of this would be very difficult to replicate anywhere in the world because of both us being a high elevation lake and very little pollution in our area, and being fed with basically naturally purified water coming from ultimately from Crater Lake. Mother Nature knew what she was doing here, and there's, AFA has been identified in a couple other very small, inaccessible lakes, which they have to be a high elevation lake, but nowhere near the scale of Klamath Lake, which is the reason that we're here. So yeah, this is pretty much the only place in the world that you can get this unique algae at scale. Yeah, so that's why we're here. Yeah, the harvest varies, usually, give or take a month, but basically starts harvest sometime in July, and it ends sometime in November. So we do have that window of opportunity. We are a high mountain lake, and we do get lots of snow and freezing. We get a true 4 seasons here, and the lake does freeze over. And with the lake freezing over, we have found a profile within that freezing of the lake, the top crust, of creating a much, more prolific algae. So it happens every year. As soon as that's basically what we stop harvest at, is when the lake starts to freeze, or when we hit capacity in all of our inventory, all of our freezers, anywhere that we can store algae, we do. And we're actually calling our harvest early this year, only because we're full. We're at capacity as far as inventory and buffered inventory in the form of wet algae in preparation for production. Well, we've already mentioned the harvesters that we build. We have 3 different methodologies. We typically only use 2 now. We basically scrapped one that was more indiscriminate, and it took a lot more filtration throughout our downflow or downstream production. And we basically scoop it or use string harvesters to harvest the algae, which is a natural filtration process that mitigates any microcystis or any other contaminants from coming into what we're harvesting at the time. And then once we're there, we move to our process facility, where we have a very unique both wet and dry process that we use to keep from damaging any of the attributes of the algae. We don't overheat it. We have the gentlest drying process in the food world. We have patents on our drying process. And a lot of the wet process that we do prior to getting dry are very unique processes that we've either built in-house or retrofitted to to what worked best for our microalgae. And the drying process, we have patents around it, and have also used it for drying organic foods, fruits and vegetables. but most, the majority of the time it's drying, the extracts from either Stem Enhance or Cyactiv, which is a spirulina-based product. And we take the phycocyanin out of that in wet process, dry it in the drying process, and that's where we lock everything in and stabilize the product for shelf life. So at its peak uniqueness, without any degradation in the product profiles. Any other drying process that we have used, we own a freeze dryer. So we do a lot of our comparisons with the top leading drying process in the food world, and we own it. And we do constant comparisons. And with that methodology, it's more of a high pressure vacuum system. And what we find is it homogenizes everything. So instead of doing an extract, it actually blends everything together. Actually, it diminishes it quite a bit, where we can't even get an efficacious dose of it without maybe, taking at least a kilo of it per serving, which would be unreasonable. The spray dry and drum dry process completely decimates the micronutrients and all of the extracts that we're trying to salvage for efficacy, basically all the PEA. It demolishes it. So whenever you do see other companies that are publishing or advertising Klamath Lake algae, they all use a spray dry process. And when you atomize this product, it completely decimates anything that would be salvageable. It's still a good source of protein, I would imagine, and you still have a decent shelf life. But if they're making any claims anywhere near what we claim as far as stem cell migration, then their claims are absolutely false. I always use the comparison of a peanut in a peanut shell. And we're trying to get the peanut out of the peanut shell, because the peanut is what holds all the efficacy. Now, the peanut shell is still healthy for you, and has some great macronutrients to it when combined or concentrated, but we have to remove that. Any other company that says that they have what we have, they use solvents, butane or ethanol, to do an extraction. We're solventless. We don't use any solvents in our processes. And we do a cold water extraction. We basically use Mother Nature and help her in the form of mechanized processes to get to the absolute purest expression of this algae. And so, we basically freeze it, we crack the cell structure, we spin it really fast in a centrifuge, we concentrate it in a reverse osmosis that we use in reverse, and then that's where we concentrate it. So if you're buying other people's, you're buying the peanut shell, everything involved in that, all crunched together, and that's what you're eating. With us, you're ingesting a purified peanut, no shell, no membrane, no anything else, and dried so gently that we haven't messed with any of the attributes of the profile of that product. So there really is no comparison, none whatsoever. If you're an IBO and, this is a business, and like me, anytime I'm involved in a business, I want to know everything about the business, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how we set ourselves apart from everybody else. This by far should be your best feature benefit as far as somebody bringing this up. This should be your best arrow in your quiver for helping people get past this. It's a real issue. It does exist. Microcystis is a hepatotoxin, and it's a microcontaminant that grows in the lake alongside AFA in different cycles. So there's times that microcystis is high and AFA is low. Well, during those times, we don't harvest. So even during the harvest times, there could be cycles. There's usually 4 to 5 cycles that we find that we test with microscopes out there and do plate counts of what we see. And if it's below a certain plate count, we harvest that day. and using a methodology that even if there is microcystis, it doesn't stick to the strings that we use in that methodology. So with microcystis, the good, the bad thing about it is if it's ingested in large quantities, it's a neurotoxin, or I'm sorry, take that back, a hepatotoxin that degrades your liver. So it's a bad thing, and you don't want it present. So we take ours, I think a little over 10 years ago, the permissible human level for consumption was somewhere around 10 to 12 parts per million. We actually take ours below 1 part per million. So we have less than regular drinking water coming out of your faucet. So there's really no chance of that being in your product. And the reason for that is we have a patented process that can remove, even if there is microcystis present with the AFA that we harvest, we can run it through that process and it separates the two in an aqueous state. So before it even gets to any of our downstream wet process where we spin it with a centrifuge and concentrate it with concentrate it with a reverse osmosis that we use in reverse, the microcystis has been removed. So, so literally this is where we set ourselves apart from anybody else in the world. We're the one that hold the intellectual property on this, and we do not share it with anybody else. Nobody can license it from us. They ask, and we've never granted them the ability to do this. There was one company that did it. We sued them and they went away and they never used it again. So, so we're very serious about keeping this in-house. And in-house is our symbiotic relationship with Cerule and Desert Lake Technologies. So, so this should be you should have the absolute best answer when this comes up, if there's any pushback whatsoever off of somebody Googling Klamath Lake algae. This is one that we're asked probably more often than anything else. And I understand the concern because it's a wild harvest. We have to be opportunistic in the ability to harvest when it's harvestable. Just for perspective, we've been around since 1998. And we've never had a year that we didn't harvest and have enough. What we were lacking in the early years was the increase in efficiencies of our methodologies in the way that we either extrapolated or processed. So we are always in a constant state of R&D. We're always trying to, the dryers that I just talked about, we have a 3.0 version of it that creates a more efficient and a better product, to be honest with you. But when it comes to the lake, this is a great question. With it being the largest body of water in the state of Oregon, which is approximately it's about 28 miles long by about 8 miles wide, approximately 235 square miles. Within that, we literally harvest from about 1.5 square miles. And so if there was a need for us to scale, because Cerule sales kind of go through the roof and you guys go through world domination, all we have to do is build more harvesters. But I can't do that unless the POs or the purchase orders or the need is there, because it has to make sense. Because of our symbiotic relationship, it depends on your sales. So if your sales go through the roof, I just build more harvesters. It's real easy for me. We control every part of the process prior to it being sent to you guys to be put into pill form. So we're the bulk suppliers. We're in control of all the methodologies. That should be the least of your worries. And if you look at 230 miles, we're literally harvesting from less than 0.5% of that lake right now. So yeah, I would love to just see the problem that we finally went over 1%.
Right.
If you guys could get me over 1%, I would be stoked. That'd be 2.3 miles. So add a mile, that means your sales are going to double. Mm-hmm. So exponentially speaking, yeah, I think, I mean, we could eventually run out if everybody on earth was double dosing on every single product that you had. So yeah, at that point, what a great problem to have for the IBS.